We see it every year. Young teams that were lottery bound for a number of years finally give us that glimpse of being a team that is soon to be a force to be reckoned with. Going from being a bottom feeder in the league and then exceeding expectations by making noise and managing to squeak into the playoffs as one of the last seeds, and then giving the number 1 seed a run for their money in the first round. And going into the offseason, you think, okay, this team is going to be a problem in the next couple of years. They come out of nowhere and are all of a sudden finding themselves as contenders. Well, there is one team in particular going into this season who were making strides in the right direction last season, but will certainly be turning heads and be the biggest surprise team of the NBA this year. And yes, I'm talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that went from a future dynasty in the making with the young guns of Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden to moving on from all of them and having no titles to show for it, a team that went into a full rebuild and managed to find themselves on a pathway to contention quicker than what most people had anticipated. How good will they be, you might ask? Well, let's talk about it. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a video, and in return, I'll be providing more NBA content like this. Now, when the Oklahoma City Thunder traded away Russell Westbrook as well as Paul George in 2019, sort of ending this era of a team trying to compete under Westbrook after Kevin Durant left the team, it was clear at that time they were starting fresh, starting a new chapter that was going to be years away from competing. And some people thought the Thunder were crazy in wanting to move on from Paul George, and especially Westbrook, who was the heart and soul of that team, had been with them for over a decade. But then when you saw what they were able to get for these guys, you thought, okay, the value, the future value is there for a foundation that can be built upon. It's just going to take a long time. They get multiple first-round picks in the deal for Paul George, including 2 of which have already been realized in Jalen Williams, which they used with the number 12 pick, and has already looked like one of the biggest steals of that draft class, who finished second in Rookie of the Year voting. A very versatile hustle player, great on defense, but you can see he has the potential to become a great offensive player as well. And then the other pick being Trey Mann, which has also been a decent pickup for them. But the biggest piece in the Paul George trade specifically was the Thunder getting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in the deal. Here is what gives me so much confidence going into this year and the future for this team. Aside from all the other great moves and hitting on draft picks, which I'll talk about, the Thunder have already, yes, I said already, have a superstar on their hands in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I know some will say it's premature or a hot take to call SGA a superstar, but really when you look at his body of work, the breakout year he had last season, and how deadly the Thunder were on some nights because of his presence in taking over games, you also factor in that he just turned 25, so in the peak of his prime, was first team All-NBA last year despite being on a team that finished 10th in the West. Dude was even getting MVP votes for the insane season he had and putting up over 31 points per game, good enough for 4th in the entire NBA, and doing so on crazy efficiency, shooting over 51% and over 20 attempts per game, and not even taking that many threes to get there, because shooting threes is not a strength of Shai's. He took over 5 threes per game the season prior, but at a 30% clip. But this past season, he reduced his 3-point attempts and focused more on his slashing ability and using his athleticism to get to the rim, draw contact, and get to the line. And it worked for him. And what I actually liked seeing from Shai most last season is that he upped his defensive game considerably. Not saying he's an elite defender or a top defender in the league, but he's making strides in the right direction on that side of the ball that you weren't seeing before. So when you talk about this upcoming season for the Thunder, and what gives me, again, so much confidence and why they are due for such a huge breakout season, is because what do most teams need in order for them to really be great and set themselves apart from their competition? They need a superstar level player, a true franchise player that is that guy that they can go to down the stretch. And the Thunder already have that on their team and their foundation in SGA, something not a lot of teams throughout the league can say that they have. And given SGA's age, the fact that he's continued to get better with every passing season leads me to believe he's going to have another monster season, potentially even better than last year, especially when you see the improved supporting cast that the Thunder have around him. And that kind of leads me into my next point. SGA aside, the Thunder last season, the roster they had last year was actually very well put together and complemented each other nicely. They were a solid team on both ends of the floor, finished top 15 in both defense and offense. They were efficient on offense, especially in transition and their ability to use their youth and speed to get downhill, and they were a feisty team on defense as well, which was greatly added by the help of their new rookie in Jalen Williams. Now, the areas where the Thunder struggled the most last year was their rebounding, particularly defensive rebounding, and giving too many second chance opportunities and points to their opponent. And as well, the other thing that they struggled with was shot blocking. The Thunder ranked in the bottom 10 in the league in both of these areas, rebounding and shot blocking. And they actually were dead last in the amount of rebounds they would give up to their opponent. Well, in comes Chet Holmgren, the #1 recruit out of high school and the Thunder's #2 pick in the draft in 2022, but missed the entire season last year. A player that is incredible, an incredible defensive big that can protect the rim, shot block, and even get out to guard the perimeter, but also a big that can crash the boards with his length. Now, of course, there is skepticism on how Chet Holmgren and his body and frame will hold up in the NBA. Case in point, he immediately got injured and missed his entire rookie season. But if how he's shown up in Summer League, Pro-Am games, as well as just how he looked in college, if that's any indication of what to expect, he would be an instant fix for the Thunder and their struggles in rebounding the ball and giving up second chance points and upping their overall shot blocking as well. Not only that, the Thunder, who had the 12th pick in this year's draft, they used that to take a chance on Derek Lively, yet another 7'1" center who was a great defender, ACC all-defensive team, another great rebounder, solid scorer. People forget that he was actually the #2 overall recruit in 2022, but fell in the draft a little. I actually think that this is going to be one of the better pickups that late in the lottery of this draft class, similar to the late lottery selection the Thunder had for Jalen Williams. So for the Thunder, you add 2 additional big men who weren't on the team last year that both provide areas of need with their rim protection and elite rebounding, but then you also just look at the rest of their young players who, for the most part, all are making strides in the right direction, improving aspects of their game that you would have to think are only going to continue to get better with more experience and getting closer to their primes. You'd have to think you're going to see a jump from Jalen Williams, and actually that goes for both Jalen Williams since they have 2 on their team. The same for Josh Giddey, who is going to be going into his 3rd season and is still only 20 years old. Another player that I think is very underrated, is a huge positive for that team when you look at his on-court, off-court numbers and the value he brings in so many facets of the game, from his playmaking, his rebounding, his scoring. Another big triple-double guy. The biggest question mark around Giddey has always been his shooting, but he actually improved significantly on his overall shooting from his rookie year to his sophomore season. Still has a lot of work to do on his shot, but going from shooting 41% to 48% in one season is impressive, as well as his three-point shooting going from 26% to 32%. So I really like Giddey and the versatility that he brings to the roster. But it doesn't just stop there. You also look at Lu Dort. Young, talented player, solid scorer. He actually took the most threes for that team last season. He regressed a little bit last year, but I think a lot of that was a product of his role and really enabling more touches for guys like SGA, Giddey, and even Jalen Williams. And like I said, Trey Mann, Isaiah Joe. Oh, and I didn't even mention they finally brought over Vasilij Micic from overseas, who has been one of the best players in the Euro League, actually winning an MVP recently in that league, bringing in an older playmaker to help with their overall passing since they were bottom 10 in the league in assists last year. And look, this doesn't even factor in the 20-plus draft picks or whatever it is the Thunder have just stashed away for a rainy day to make a trade for another All-Star if they want to, because that's really more in the long-term future, and I'm just focused on this upcoming season. But what also makes me afraid of this team, as a fan of a team that is not the Thunder, is this roster knows and plays like they don't have much to lose. They're not fighting to win now and knowing that they have a narrow window to work with like a lot of other teams around the league do. They know expectations on them are low. They know they're younger, more athletic, more energetic than most teams in the league, and they play with a ton of confidence. Not cockiness like the Grizzlies of last season, but confidence that they can beat any team on a nightly basis, and they do so by playing together as a team and everyone knowing their role and what they need to do. So how much of a breakout or a jump will we see from the Thunder? From being 10th in the West last season? Well, this is probably one of my hotter takes going into this year, but I would not be shocked to see the Thunder finishing as high as the 6th seed in the Western Conference. I know it's a stretch, given how competitive the Western Conference is, but I can see them jumping the Wolves, and given the age and the injury history of teams like the Clippers and the Golden State Warriors, I could see them passing those teams up as well. But I want to hear, where do you guys think the Thunder will land? How do you think they will fare in this upcoming season? Let me know in the comments. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.